print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Margaret Mack, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the June 3rd issue of the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And we'll start with the local article, West Side resident Javette Long featured in the Independent Health's Red Shirt campaign. Independent Health's enduring history of nationally recognized customer service and quality and deep commitment to the Western New York community is the result of the dedication of its employees. Several of their stories are part of Independent Health's new campaign, The Red Shirt Difference, which showcases the work by its red shirts to help members get the care and service they need. Buffalo resident Javette Long, an 18-year employee of Independent Health, is one of several employees who share their experiences in the campaign. She appears on TV ads, billboards, and online at redshirttreatment.com. Long is a supervisor in the Provider Relations Contract Center, which serves the needs of the physician practices, office, staff in Independent Health's network. She and her staff support the needs of Independent Health's participating providers by making sure physicians have the right information for their patients who are Independent Health members. Our job is to break down barriers to help providers do business with Independent Health easily, says Long. This includes responding to member coverage and benefit inquiries and ensuring providers understand members' coverage and assist with claim inquiries. She and her team help ensure members receive top quality service by bridging the gap between providers and members. It's a responsibility she embraces wholeheartedly. I always say we live and breathe red shirt treatment, she said. We do it in our everyday lives, whether we're at work or whether we're out in the community or whether we're home. Long attended Hutchinson Technical High School and earned a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Duval University. Following positions in pharmacy and banking, Long began in Independent Health at Independent Health in 2008 as a member services representative before joining the Provider Relations team. Outside of work, Long volunteers with the Independent Health Foundation and is an active member in her church community at True Bethel Baptist Church under the leadership of Bishop Darius Pridgeon, where she sings in the church choir. She lives on Buffalo's West Side and enjoys spending time with her dog Gotti, a Belgian Malinois. And next, under local news, we have an upcoming event. This article is written by Julian McGee. Quilt making event at Meriwether Library Branch. On June 13th, 2026, from 4 p.m. till 5:30 p.m., the Explore and More Children's Museum will be at the Frankie Meriwether Library Branch, located at 1324 Jefferson Avenue, for a celebration of America's 250th anniversary. Children from the city and community are invited to come to the library on that day to take part in a project called We the People, a quilt of belonging, to celebrate the many cultures of America and New York State. During this event, there will be a reading of The Patchwork Path, A Quilt Map to Freedom. From there, the teaching artists from Explore and More and the children ages 5-year-old to 10-year-old will make quilt squares about their family's heritage and the connection to Erie County. Afterwards, the children will be invited to contribute their quilt squares to a large county-wide quilt project. The squares will be assembled into a complete quilt and displayed by the library. Registration for this event is strongly encouraged, and drop-ins are welcome as well. For more information and to sign up, please contact Ms. Heather Birmingham, children's librarian, or Mr. Joshua Mitch, branch librarian, by calling 716-883-4418, or stop in the library and a staff member can assist you as well. The staff at Meriwether Library and Explore and More Children's Museum look forward to seeing the kids at this event. And next we moved on to state news. May 30th, community members disrupt state legislative session to demand end of the crisis in New York prisons. Participants called for the removal of Commissioner Marticello, implementation of the HALT solitary law, and expanded pathways of release. Community members disrupted the legislative session of the New York Senate to demand legislative and executive action to end the crisis in New York prisons by expanding pathways of release and ending all abuses inside. Today's action came on the heels of an action last week disrupting the Assembly legislative session. Participants highlighted the long-standing and acute crisis of racism, brutality, and death in New York's prisons. With a person now dying once every 2 days in New York prisons, the governor and legislature cannot continue with business as usual. Participants demanded immediate action to enact the following slate of legislative and executive actions. There are 5 legislative actions. First being challenging wrongful conviction. Number 2, fair and timely parole. Number 3, elder parole. 4, rights behind bars. And number 5, visiting Bill of Rights. In the executive actions they're calling for, 4 of them. First, remove the current DOCCS Commissioner Marticello. Second, expand the use of executive clemency. Third, fully implement the HALT Solidarity Confinement Law. And fourth, appoint parole board commissioners who believe in redemption and recognize the ability of people to change. Thomas Kearney, Jails Justice Network, said, "The New York State Senate and Assembly cannot continue treating the crisis inside New York prisons as routine political business while people are dying, being brutalized, and disappearing into solitary confinement. New York prisons remain in a state of racist brutality, medical neglect, abuse, torture, and death. People incarcerated in DOCCS's custody are dying at horrifying rates, while correction officers and prison leadership continue operating with little meaningful accountability. This is not simply a policy failure. This is a failure of leadership, oversight, and political courage. The New York State Senate and Assembly have both a moral and constitutional responsibility to act. The Assembly should introduce articles of impeachment against Commissioner Marticello, and the Senate should exercise its constitutional authority to carry out impeachment proceedings. No commissioner overseeing repeated deaths, brutality scandals, retaliation, unlawful solitary confinement, and systematic abuse should remain protected from accountability. The Senate and Assembly must also urgently move to protect incarcerated women and all incarcerated people by demanding immediate enforcement of the HALT Solidarity Confinement Law and expanding pathways of release that reduce suffering, overcrowding, and death. We interrupted this chamber because incarcerated people cannot interrupt the suffering force upon them every day. People are suffering and dying in the custody of the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. Women in New York prisons are being denied dignity, safety, health care, and protection from abuse. We refuse to accept a system that punishes people with isolation, neglect, and violence. We are calling for the impeachment and removal of Commissioner Daniel Martuscello. No official should remain in power while laws are ignored and human rights are violated. We demand pathways of release, including clemency, parole reform, compassionate release, and meaningful second chances. We stand here today because halt solitary is the law, and New York State continues to violate it. Solitary confinement is torture, no matter what name this administration gives it. The Senate has the constitutional power to hold appointed officials accountable. We demand the full enforcement of the halt solitary law in every correctional facility across this state, and we will continue to raise our voices until New York chooses humanity, accountability, and justice over abuse and silence. Background. New York prisons are in a long-standing and acute crisis of racist brutality, torture, and death. A person is dying once every 2 days in a New York prison, a rate that is unconscionable. 3 women recently died in a 4-week span at Bedford Hills, CF, following repeated efforts to sound the alarm about abusive conditions. Manuela Mordago, Tracy Morales, and Shamdi Arjan. The New York Times recently documented 120 cases where officers brutalized people after they were already restrained, and frequently then locked the people in solitary confinement on false charges as cover-up for the abuse. The Times separately documented 3 people brutally killed by officers that had previously gone unreported. Liddell Kennedy, Clement Lowe, and Amik Nixon tragically joined the long list of black men officers killed in recent years, including Robert Brooks, Messiah Natwi, Leonard Strickland, Samuel Harrell, Carl Taylor, Terry Cooper, and John McMillan. Due to extreme racially biased and draconian sentences and parole denials, in addition to medical and mental health neglect, solitary confinement, and abusive conditions, a person dies in New York prison more than once every 3 days, with an average age of death of 56 years old. Over 200 people have died in New York prisons just since Robert Brooks was killed. At the center of this crisis is DOCCS, Commissioner Daniel Martuscello III. Under Commissioner Martuscello's leadership, DOCCS has continued violating the halt solitary confinement law despite multiple lawsuits finding the agency has systematically ignored the law since its implementation. Following the illegal correction officer strike earlier this year, DOCCS escalated lockdown conditions across the prison system, restricting visitation, programming, movement, services, and human contact, while continuing widespread use of solitary confinement conditions in direct contradiction to HALT. Meanwhile, DOCCS has proposed a budget of $4.15 billion annually, in addition to a separate $1 billion to have the National Guard in the prisons. There are clear solutions to these crises that will save lives and hundreds of millions of dollars, expand pathways of release, and transform the environment inside. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And also under the subject of state news, DeNapoli, Staten Island woman, pays full restitution of over $247,000 after cheating brother-in-law out of the sister's New York State pension death benefits. New York State Comptroller Thomas P. DiNapoli and Richmond County District Attorney Michael McMahon today announced the arrest and sentencing of a Staten Island woman for the theft of her sister's state pension death benefit. Lorna Gutierrez, 68, fraudulently designated herself as her sister's sole beneficiary while her sister was on her deathbed. When her sister died, Gutierrez received over $400,000 from the pension fund, which her sister had wished to be split between her husband and the defendant. Lorna Gutierrez tried to cut her brother-in-law out of his share of his sister's death benefit just before she died, DiNapoli said. This callous action betrayed her sister's wishes for both to have some financial stability at a time of personal loss. I thank DA McMahon for his partnership in protecting the state pension fund from attempts to defraud it and its members. Manipulating her deceased sister's pension to personally enrich herself, this defendant's conduct represented a serious breach of trust, undermined the decedent's wishes, and caused both financial and emotional harm. From scammers and check washers to identity thieves and gang members, those who commit financial crimes on Staten Island will be held accountable. And I thank Economic Crimes Bureau Chief Greg Brown for his diligent efforts to secure both restitution and justice in this case, McMahon said. Gutierrez's sister was a member of the New York State and local retirement system through her work as a nurse at the South Beach Psychiatric Center. She chose to leave her survivors a death benefit that amounted to $411,000 to be split amongst her parents, husband, and sister. At the time of her death, only her husband and Gutierrez were alive. While her sister was in the hospital approximately 11 days before her death, Gutierrez used her sister's credentials to create an online retirement account, designating herself as the sole beneficiary. Gutierrez received the entire death benefit of $411,000, which he then invested. And next up, we'll move on to the column Eye on History by Eva M. Doyle. A Slave Ship Called Jesus. The Black Holocaust, written by E. Anderson, contains the following narrative by an enslaved African on a slave ship. We had to either squat with knees and arms folded together or sit with another person wedged between our legs for 8 to 14 hours every day for the weeks and months it took to cross the Atlantic. The alternative was to lie flat on our backs for hours or days on wooden deck boards that were splintered and filthy with blood, human waste, parasitic bugs, flies, and vomit. We were shoulder to shoulder, chained to each other and chained to the floor or the ship's hull. The dying lay slacked, shackled to the living, and the living to the dead. They could reach the latrines if they were available by crawling over other human beings in a tossing ship. At the end of the journey, those Africans who did survive were often so ill they were unable to stand without excrement running down their legs, or to walk from the ship without having to pause every minute. On many ships, the men were sold, and the women were kept for the pleasure of the crew. Author E. Anderson calls the enslavement of African people the most underreported major event in history. African people were prisoners aboard ships of death and brutality. But yet these ships had such names as Brotherhood, John the Baptist, Justice, Integrity, Liberty, Good Intent, Black Boy, Morning Star, Mary, Gift of God, and the Good Ship Jesus. All of these are recorded in a book called There Is a River, written by Vincent Harding. John Hawkins, the slave trader for Queen Elizabeth I, commanded the ship Jesus. Hawkins lived from 1532 to 1595. He was considered to be the first English slave trader to profit from the triangular trade. In 1564, Queen Elizabeth partnered with Hawkins by leasing the huge 700-ton ship Jesus to him. Hawkins roamed up and down the west coast of Africa with his cousin, Francis Drake. His mission? To capture human lives. He conducted brutal raids, violent beatings, and terrorized the Africans aboard his ship. In a book called The Queen's Slave Trader, historian Nick Hazelwood wrote the following: Hawkins' actions and attitudes toward his cargo set the precedent for those who followed him for the next 200 years. The fleet of John Hawkins consisted of 4 ships. In the lead was the ship Jesus. It was a floating fortress. Hawkins commanded an artillery of huge firepower. His men went ashore every day to take the inhabitants with their guns, burning and looting as they went along. As the invaders ravaged the land, they recorded the high quality of life of African craftsmanship and the organization of their settlements. Their homes were kept in order with a place for everything. The Africans were well organized in battle. They fought the slave traders with swords and darts, with heads of both ends of iron. One end of the dart was like a double-edged sword, 1.5 feet long, with the other end acting as a counterweight, so that it flew level. This was recorded in Hazelwood's book, The Queen's Slave Trader. The Africans fought a valiant fight, but they were no match for the power of the guns. Loaded with human cargo, stolen goods, and gold, the Jesus set sail across the ocean, only to return again. Although he committed murder and other violent acts, John Hawkins was knighted by the Queen for his role in defeating the Spanish Armada. The voyages of John Hawkins paved the way for slave ships around the world, leading to the shores of America. The slave ships that docked at the New York harbor between 1715 and 1755 had such names as Charity, Friendship, Hope, Morning Star, Mary, and yes, there was a slave ship called the Wheel of Fortune. Slave traders called blackbirders were commonplace in New York. Slave ships sailed in and out of New York. The newspaper called the Anti-Slavery Standard stated that New York was one of the great slave ship marts on the continent. A slave market was established on Wall Street in 1711, where slaves were bought and sold. The Wall Street market carried the names of prominent families in America who were involved in the slave trade. The legacy of John Hawkins and the slave ship Jesus touched every part of the globe. And next up, we're going to move on to a column about health. This article is written by Sue Sims. The Power of Eating Season, Why Foods Like Mango Matter for Our Health, Our Wallets, and Our Heritage. As the weather warms and the days stretch a little longer, nature begins offering some of its sweetest gifts. Among them is the mango, vibrant, juicy, and packed with nutrients. Mangoes have long been part of our culinary story, connecting us to Caribbean, Southern African, and Latin food traditions. But beyond their cultural resonance, mangoes remind us of something simple and powerful. Eating seasonal food is one of the easiest ways to nourish our bodies, support our communities, and stretch our food dollars. Seasonal eating is not a trend. It's a return to what our grandparents and great-grandparents understood instinctively. Before supermarkets carried everything year-round, families relied on what the land provided in each season. That rhythm, spring greens, summer fruits, fall roots, helped shape the dishes we still love today. When we choose seasonal foods now, we tap back into that wisdom. Take mangoes, which reach their peak in late spring and early summer. When they're in season, they're sweeter, juicier, and more affordable. A ripe mango delivers a powerhouse of vitamins A and C, fiber, and antioxidants that support immune health, skin glow, and digestion. For communities disproportionately affected by hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease, seasonal fruits like mangoes offer a naturally low-sodium, nutrient-dense option that fits beautifully into a balanced diet. But the benefits go beyond nutrition. Seasonal foods are often less expensive because they're abundant and don't require long-distance shipping. That means families can enjoy fresher produce without stretching their budgets. In many neighborhoods where access to fresh food is limited, seasonal produce sales at local and farmers markets, mobile vendors, and community gardens can make a real difference. A bag of in-season fruit can cost less than processed snacks and nourish far more. Eating seasonally also strengthens community ties. Neighborhoods are reclaiming traditions of gardening, farmers markets, and cooperative buying. When we choose seasonal produce, we support local growers, urban farms, and small businesses working to bring healthier options into our communities. It's a quiet but powerful form of economic empowerment. And let's not forget the joy. Mangoes bring sunshine to the table. Blended into smoothies, tossed into salads, folded into salsas, or eaten simply by themselves. Seasonal foods invite creativity and connection. They encourage us to cook together, share recipes, and pass down traditions. As mango season arrives, consider making seasonal eating part of your routine. Start small, pick one fruit or vegetable each month that's at its peak. Explore new recipes, visit a local farmer's market, bring your children or grandchildren into the kitchen, and let them taste the difference that freshness makes. Here's a very simple mango salsa recipe that I use a lot. Serve it with meat as well as fish. It's also delicious on its own in a salad or with tortilla chips. Don't forget, a ripe mango can be an excellent dessert alternative to cake, pie, or ice cream. Here's a recipe for mango salsa. 2 ripe mangoes peeled, pitted, and diced. 1/2 of a red bell pepper, finely diced. 1/4 red onion, finely diced. 1 jalapeno, remove the seeds and finely dice. You add that to whatever level you want. 1 lime, juiced. 1/4 bunch of cilantro, stems removed and chopped. Salt to taste, optional. In a medium bowl, mix all the ingredients together, adjusting seasoning as desired. Let it sit for about 15 or 20 minutes for flavor to develop. Serve at room temperature and enjoy. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And next up we have a financial article written by Shika D. The financial investment moves more young Black investors are exploring in 2026. An NPA Newswire. your financial freedom journey will not begin unless you start investing in real estate, stocks, and more. Financial investment is becoming important to Black investors, and that's such a great sign of times to come. Wealth building strategies that Black investors need to consider are real estate, stock market investing, long-term strategies, and entrepreneurship. The investing world is rapidly changing to fit the growing needs of new investors. The great news is that in 2026, more and more Black investors are taking an active role in managing their finances and investing in real estate, stocks, and other beneficial markets. Some reasons why Black investors are making smart financial moves in recent years are greater access to financial education, investing apps, online communities, and growing conversations around generational wealth. Are you ready to get some financial investment advice and start making some generous money moves towards your financial freedom? Start with stock market investing. Historically, many barriers contributed to lower market participation among some communities, such as lack of access, limited financial education, distrust of traditional financial institutions. However, mobile investing platforms, educational content creators, and social media discussions have helped making investing feel more accessible to first-time investors. That's the brilliant thing about the tech age. No matter who you are or where you live, you can start investing in the market, as long as you have the minimum amount of funds to begin. Even $5 is enough to start and get into the market, especially with DRIP investing methods, DRIP. Long-term strategies rather than short-term speculation. Broad market index funds, retirement accounts, and dividend-paying stocks are gaining attention because they offer opportunities for steady growth over time. Young investors are increasingly discussing interesting concepts as part of broader wealth-building goals such as compound growth, dollar cost averaging, long-term portfolio diversification. Remember that the compound effect was dubbed the eighth wonder of the world, according to Albert Einstein. The quote has been attributed to many different people. If you keep on taking money out of your investments, then you are not allowing the compound effect to do its job. Think long term. Retirement planning at an earlier age. Rather than waiting until later in life, many younger professionals are exploring different choices designed to support long-term financial goals, such as employer-sponsored retirement plans, individual retirement accounts, and automated investing options. Starting earlier allows investments more time to potentially grow, making consistency an important priority for many investors. Even if you are in your teens or 20s right now, start investing. Putting $5 or $20 into an ETF, starting in your teens or 20s, could result in millions by the time you are ready to retire in your 50s or 60s. Don't lose out on the power of time to make smaller amounts of money into huge piles of retirement dough. Real estate. Home ownership continues to be viewed as both a personal milestone and a financial investment opportunity. Some younger Black investors are exploring different strategies to build equity and create additional income streams. Purchasing starter homes, multifamily properties, or income-generating rental units. Others are becoming interested in real estate investment trusts, those are REITs, which offer exposure to real estate markets without directly purchasing property. Always keep in mind that your primary residence is not an investment property and should never be considered in your net worth calculations. It is always going to be just a home for you and your family to live in, nothing more. If you need additional funds to buy real estate, consider 100% hard money financing. Entrepreneurship. Many younger investors are diversifying income through side business, digital brands, consulting work, content creation, e-commerce ventures. Business ownership is often viewed not only as an income opportunity, but also as a pathway toward greater financial control and long-term asset building. Financial literacy. No matter where you are in your financial journey right now, you can start becoming more financially literate from the comfort of your home. Podcast, YouTube channels, online courses, books, and finance-focused communities have created more opportunities for younger investors to learn about budgeting, debt management, investing principles, taxes, and wealth preservation. Online conversations around money management have become more normalized, especially among younger generations seeking practical strategies for financial growth. Frequently asked questions. Should you invest first or pay off debt first? A lot of people wonder about this question, and it's an important one to consider. But everyone is going to be in a different situation and have a different answer to this conundrum. If you have a lot of credit card debt that has a high interest rate, you might consider paying that off first before starting to invest. However, mortgages, student loans, and car loans, which have a low interest rate, are fine to pay down slowly while investing at the same time. Many younger investors are balancing investment goals while managing student loans, housing costs, inflation, or credit obligations. Financial planning often involves finding a balance between paying down debt and investing consistently for future growth. Are financial investment apps safe? Absolutely. Of course, you don't want to choose just any investment app. The best way to go about it is to pick one that's associated with your primary bank or financial institution. Every bank has an investment platform built into it. There are also independent fintech companies that you can use, like Robinhood and Interactive Brokers, which have been around for a long time and are well liked by investors. They also have a very low barrier to entry and are easy to use. The most important thing here is to get over your fear and anxiety and start investing now. Do not wait for some mysterious time in the future. The more time you waste, the longer it will take you to reach your retirement goals. Remember, time and compound interest are two important parts of the financial freedom journey. Get investment advice if you need it, but start investing as soon as possible. Smart money moves include sound financial investment strategies. Your financial freedom journey will not begin unless you start investing in real estate, stocks, and more. Financial investment is becoming important to Black investors, and that's such a great sign of the times to come. What are you waiting for? Please check out our related articles on our website for more interesting content. The financial investment moves more Black people investors are exploring in 2026, the Black Press USA. And next, in the subject of national news, rest in peace, hip-hop legend Rob Bass died at 59. This article is by MSR News Online. Minnesota spokesman recorder Rob Bass, one half of the legendary hip-hop duo Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, and the voice behind the genre-crossing 1988 anthem It Takes Two, passed away on May 22, 2026 at age 59 after a private battle with cancer. The post, "Rest in Peace, hip-hop legend Rob Bass, dead at 59," appears first in Minnesota's Spokesman Recorder. Rob Bass, born Robert Ginyard and one half of the legendary hip-hop duo Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, passed away peacefully on May 22nd at age 59 after a private battle with cancer, leaving behind a legacy rooted in the 1988 anthem "It Takes Two" and a pioneering role in bringing hip-hop and house music to mainstream audiences. Hip-hop has lost one of its foundational voices. Rob Bass, born Robert Ginyard and one half of the legendary duo. Oh, that's a repeated paragraph. His family announced the news on his Instagram page. Rob's music, energy, and legacy helped shape a generation and brought joy to millions around the world, the statement read. Beyond the stage, he was a loving father, family man, friend, and creative force whose impact will never be forgotten. Thank you for the music, the memories, and the moments that became the soundtrack of our lives. A Harlem legacy that reached millions. Rob Bass grew up in Harlem, New York, where he met his future partner, DJ Easy Rock, in the 5th grade. Together, they built a rap career from the ground up, recording early demos before breaking through with one of the most recognizable songs in hip-hop history. Their 1988 hit, "It Takes Two," was a genre-crossing phenomenon, blending rap, dance, and sampled funk grooves into a high-energy anthem that crossed over to mainstream audiences in a way few records have done before. The track reached number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has since been sampled by artists including Snoop Dogg and the Black Eyed Peas and was certified platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America. The duo also charted with "Joy and Pain" and "Get on the Dance Floor." For Black communities across the country, "It Takes Two" was more than a song. It was a moment, a feeling, and a memory tied to block parties, cookouts, roller rinks, and living rooms from coast to coast. If you grew up Black in the late 1980s or early 1990s, that record was part of a soundtrack of your life. A pioneer who helped shape the sound. Alongside DJ Easy Rock, Rob Bass was instrumental in cross-pollinating hip-hop and house music and bringing them to the mainstream in the 1980s. His influence on the genre extended far beyond chart positions. He helped prove that hip-hop could fill dance floors and reach audiences that had never heard the music before, opening doors that generations of artists would walk through after him. DJ Easy Rock, whose real name is Rodney Bryce, passed away in 2014 from complications related to diabetes. The two had been friends since childhood, and Rob Bass spoke often about the bond they shared. He was a good DJ, but everybody just loved him for who he was, Bass once said. Just a funny guy. Rob Bass's final public statement came just days before his death, when he marked his 59th birthday with a post to Instagram. "Happy 59th birthday to me. God, thank you for allowing me to see another year," he wrote. He will be remembered not just for the records, but for the joy he gave to an entire generation. Rest in power, Rob Bass. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And next up, we have an editorial by Kristen Breton. Do most people oppose new AI data centers? Examining who opposes and supports them. This article was written May 30th. For the past 2 weeks, I have held an open poll to see whether people in the community and across different states oppose or favor the construction of artificial intelligence data centers. 60% of individuals strongly oppose the construction of new AI data centers. 20% somewhat favored them, and 20% somewhat opposed them. In my last column, Contributions, I focused on exploring some reasons why AI data centers may be excluded from environmental reviews. I shared several cases that demonstrated how leverage, money, and political influence allowed some companies to bypass the environmental review process, resulting in passive responses to community members who clearly reject the construction of new data centers in their areas. With so much opposition, why are some people still in favor of these developments? And what is driving that support? First, let's understand who exactly is opposing these projects and who is in favor of them. Based on the survey I conducted, the individuals who strongly opposed the construction of AI data centers held positions in environmental justice, disaster risk management, and environmental preservation. As discussed before, AI data centers pose alarming risks to air quality. We have already seen declines in respiratory health within minority communities in Tennessee due to excessive air pollution. There is also the issue of habitat loss, where the new building replaces untouched land or existing structures in rural areas. The type of areas filled with lush landscapes and open space for wildlife to exist unbothered. The individuals who somewhat favored the construction of new AI data centers held positions in community planning for disaster recovery, visual content production, and digital asset development. Many of these professionals look to AI as a tool that produces positive results. Community planners rely on AI to automate routine tasks such as permitting and data analysis, forecast demographics and infrastructure needs, and summarize large volumes of public feedback. These tools are transforming local government operations and making planning, building, and code enforcement more efficient. It is clear that individuals often oppose or support AI depending on the personal or professional benefits they receive from using the technology. AI is a helpful and effective tool that is quickly shaping workflows and advancing companies. A content creator might use the tool to generate more attractive ideas. Contractors and consultants use AI to outsource services more easily and reduce cost. 50% of tech workers use AI to assist with software development. Emergency management agencies are slowly trying to incorporate AI into disaster recovery and grant processes. CEOs value AI because it reduces labor costs while increasing profits. Even as employment numbers continue rising, despite concerns about whether those open jobs are truly resulting in hires. Finance specialists use AI to reduce human error, automate repetitive tasks, and analyze massive data sets at extremely fast speeds. With AI already widely accessible, many people question why they should continue performing difficult or repetitive tasks manually when faster automated systems are available. The problem is not that AI is inherently bad or that all AI data centers should be rejected entirely. The problem is the dismissal of the environmental and social impacts placed on communities that will be negatively affected by these developments. If CEOs, public officials, local governments, state governments, and stakeholders are secretly closing deals on new AI centers while reducing transparency, that sends a message that communities are viewed as inferior and disposable. Over time, this pattern can contribute to declining quality of life, worsening health conditions, reduced environmental protections, and increased disregard for human well-being. What is the solution? We must establish a highly regulated and transparent development and review process for all AI data centers. There must also be stronger representation for minority communities in government decision-making, a rejection of bias over reality, and a rejection of favoritism toward individuals with power or wealth. Everyone can benefit from AI when it is used responsibly. Employees, doctors searching for cures to diseases, students preparing for exams, artists developing new ideas, and businesses trying to improve efficiency all benefit from the technology when it is used for its intended purpose. The problem begins when the environment, social rights, public health, and the quality of human life are threatened by greed, exploitation of communities, resource extraction, and unchecked development. Everyone may have access to AI, but when one group receives most of the benefits while another receives most of the environmental and social damage, it creates disproportionate inequality. As an environmental scientist, I frequently examine how land may be distributed by actions such as resource extraction, land acquisition, habitat loss, ecosystem disruption, and declining air and water quality, along with the long-term impacts these actions have on human quality of life. So far, what I am noticing is that not only is the land being disrupted, but more people are speaking up about their health being compromised. At the same time, the employment market surrounding AI is being presented as a new revolution of growth and opportunity, when in reality, the statistics often are unclear or misleading or not properly broken down. That article was written by Christine Brayton. And the next editorial is by Veronica Golden. Senses, Spirituality, and Mental Health. May is Mental Health Month. I recently presented at Calvary and wanted to put those thoughts into writing. In the Black community, spirituality and mental health are deeply connected, and that connection deserves honest conversation. In my office, I keep a graphic that reads, "You can be spiritual and heartbroken. You can be spiritual and depressed. You can be spiritual and angry." Spirituality helps you face the human experience, not suppress it. Reducing the stigma around faith and mental health is essential. When spirituality is presented incorrectly within the family system, it can become a tool for control, shame, and compliance instead of healing. That distortion can also distort how people see God. The Bible offers powerful examples of how our five senses connect to mental wellness. In Mark 10:46, blind Bartimaeus didn't ask for change, coins, instead of change, transformation. Vision requires clarity. When the vision is made plain, faith becomes focused, and focused faith produces hope. Touch is reflected in Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision and make it plain. Writing down goals creates intentionality and supports social-emotional learning. Dr. Gail Matthews found that people are 42% more likely to achieve their goals if they write them down. Writing slows racing thoughts and brings clarity to the brain. Hearing appears in Romans 10:17. Faith comes by hearing. Hearing the Word of God from your pastor can bring comfort, hope, and resilience during difficult seasons. Smell is highlighted in 2 Corinthians 2:15. For we are the fragrance of Christ. Scent connects directly to the brain's emotion and memory centers. which is why certain smells instantly trigger strong memories or emotions. In the same way, the light within us should have a positive impact on those around us. Finally, taste is reflected in Psalm 81:10. Open your mouth wide and I will fill it. What we consume spiritually, mentally, and emotionally shapes our thoughts and desires. Working in education, I often ask students about their favorite artist. Approximately 60% mention NBA Youngboy. He has multiple baby mamas, and his lyrics center on violence, sex, and drugs. The reality is that our youth need positive alternatives to consume and culturally responsive support systems for our youth. In summary, emotions change, and that's normal. We are human, not robots. The difference between mental health struggles and mental health illness is often how long those feelings last and how much they disrupt daily functioning, relationships, work, or school. Improving mental health can start with simple practices: quality sleep, exercise, healthy relationships, mindfulness, affirmations, counseling, and go to church. And finally, we have time for a portion of the article by Betty Jean Grant, dated May 30th. Buffalo Juneteenth on target to take first place trophy this year. For years, the Buffalo Juneteenth Festival was either second or third, either in front of or behind Detroit, Michigan. Galveston was usually in the first place position for the largest number of people attending the festival. Buffalo's festival attendees number is still high, but our two competition cities are now Milwaukee and Minneapolis. June 13th and June 14th of this year is the 50th anniversary of Buffalo Juneteenth Festival Incorporated. This highly anticipated celebration has become a national holiday, will kick off with a parade of over 5,000 participants, starting at the headquarters and marching down Genesee Street to the festival that will be in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park. An added delight this year is the Juneteenth Festival Incorporated 50th Anniversary Gala that will be held Friday, June 5th at the Classic 5 Banquet at 2425 Niagara Falls Boulevard in Amherst. The 500 available tickets sold out in less than a week. Also, the Buffalo Juneteenth flag raising ceremony will be held Monday, June 8th at noon in Niagara Square across from Buffalo City Hall. Some numbers of experts are predicting that over 175,000 persons will attend the celebration in Dr. MLK Park on one or maybe both days of the festival this year. If those numbers do indeed bear out, y'all can just put that big old trophy in our hands and crown the Buffalo Juneteenth Parade and Festival as #1 in the land. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 3rd issue of the Buffalo Criterion. We read from the Buffalo Criterion every Friday at 7 p.m. Your reader has been Margaret Mack. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service with the New York Times. Following that at 9 o'clock is Discover Magazine. And at 10 o'clock is episode number 9, The Conclusion of Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. Stay with us. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555.
Hello, this is Chris Wilhelm, and for the next hour, I'll